USA Today's Bob Nightengale Sunday Notebook had a big White Sox nugget regarding White Sox legend A.J. Pierzynski replacing manager Pedro Grifol next season. Let's make the case for and against A.J. managing the club next on Lockdown White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and the site expert of Southside Showdown, part of the Fansided Network. You can check out my written content at SouthsideShowdown.com. And also, I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox. Also follow or subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Well, the Chicago White Sox, they keep losing games. The current losing streak just hit 14 games after the Sox were swept by the Seattle Mariners over the weekend. That tied the franchise's single-season consecutive losing streak that was set this year. That's right. The Sox now have had two franchise-worst losing streaks in one season. It took almost 124 years to reach that terrible mark. And they reached 80 losses before winning 30 games. In a pivotal period for the franchise, GM Chris Getz has yet to make any deals before the deadline, furthering the misery of the weekend. I'll discuss just how bad the weekend went for the Chicago White Sox in the second segment. The first segment, though, is going to address the recent report by Bob Nightengale that former Sox catcher A.J. Pierzynski is under consideration to replace Pedro Grifol next season. Let's make the case for and against his potential hiring. And then finally, it's Monday, so let's do a Minor League Monday report. SupplyHouse.com is a reliable way to get parts fast. Shop for your next plumbing, HVAC, or electrical job and get fast shipping from coast to coast at SupplyHouse.com. All right, so I have no problem with the White Sox considering A.J. Pierzynski for the managing job next season. The rhetoric around Pedro Grifol's job status is starting to build that he will be likely fired after the season. GM Chris Getz spoke last week on it and basically said, hey, results need to happen. And, well, losing 14 games in a row for the second time this season isn't exactly results. However, I think the Sox can do better than AJ. I know I'm going to take some slinging arrows for that, but I'll discuss my list for other candidates in a moment, and I've kind of already discussed it, but I'll go over it again. But I will say this. I think at the very least, AJ has the potential to be a net neutral manager, and that's fine. You want a manager who at least reaches the floor of being an overall guy who neither costs you a lot of wins, but isn't necessarily the reason you win. You know, obviously talent should be winning out. Think of it like what the LA Dodgers have in Dave Roberts. He's all right during the regular season. You know, he's not this exactly like amazing manager where all the buttons he pushes, everything works out. You know, he doesn't have to. He basically just doesn't have to crash the Corvette during the regular season. And usually his decisions wash out. Obviously, there's the knock on him in the postseason issues, how they have only won one World Series during this great stretch. But again, October is so random that not the best team is going to win the World Series every year. And given the state of the Sox, you would take a guy who could at least steer you towards winning. But if you can find a plus manager, that is the ceiling. Meaning that is a manager who has a knack for pushing the right buttons that can literally add a couple wins to your regular season column and even in the postseason. You know, think Bruce Bochy or Craig Counsell up until this year. You just don't want Pedro, who is a net negative manager. His decisions usually cost the White Sox wins, as you and I both know. And I do think there is a case to be made for AJ being hired next season, despite no previous managerial experience. My guy, Vinny Parisi of SouthsideShowdown.com, he's going to have a piece up around 8 o'clock. Well, as the show debuts, making the case for and against AJ's potential managerial hiring. So you can check that out. But before I get into making the case for AJ, let's quickly go over Bob's report. Here's his little nugget. Former All-Star catcher AJ Pierzynski has quietly emerged as a serious candidate to manage the Chicago White Sox in 2025 if they dismiss Pedro Grifol after the season as expected. There should be no if. It should be when. Pedro Grifol's got to go, and I've talked about it countless times. Other White Sox podcasts have talked about it countless times. I love how Josh Nelson of Sox Machine just is always making the case for it. So, but here would be my case for hiring AJ Pierzynski. Number one, former catchers usually make the best managers. They do have to see the game through all four aspects: pitching, defense, base running, and hitting. So they usually always make the best managers. And you see it paying off for the Cleveland Guardians with Stephen Vogt. No previous management experience. And he's come in and done a great job in Cleveland with basically a banged up starting rotation and a lineup that really only has three guys in Quan, Ramirez, and Naylor. And they do all the little things right. And when a team has that, when they're able to go from first to third, or they're able to get that extra base off a longer hit that looks like a single, but they can turn it into a double, that is usually the sign of a team buying in. And I think AJ has the cred to get guys to buy in like Stephen Vogt. Also, AJ's not going to sugarcoat it like Pedro. He's a straight shooter. He tells it like it is. He understands the modern game with how he's still involved as a TV analyst and a host of a very successful podcast. And you can hear his thoughts on how the game should be played and how rosters should be constructed. And the Sox could use a butt kicker instead of a kumbaya guy like Pedro. The only time Pedro ever really ripped the team was that, what he said was a flat effort against the Orioles, against Kyle Bradish, who's an ace pitcher and basically nearly no hit him. That seemed awkward. That seemed out of character because how Pedro's been this kumbaya guy. And again, he complimented Eloy Jimenez and how hard he's working. Eloy should be on the IL, okay? And I could see AJ saying that. I could see him saying, Eloy's hurt. He shouldn't be here. And I know today's athlete may not respond to like a hard-nosed guy, but AJ's been in the game and he's won at the biggest level where he can maybe come from a place of experience to get some buy-in to say, look, this is what it takes to win. Okay. This is how we have to play. And here's a World Series ring to prove it, and the ego may work as he can maybe manage in a way that Ozzie Guillen did that was so successful. Because one of the things that Ozzie did, we can always talk about his ego, but that actually kind of helped the White Sox during their run to the World Series and during the 2008 AL Central title. He took on all the blame. And while, yes, he maybe got a lot of the credit, but by taking on all that blame and being the mouthpiece and being the face of the franchise, it allowed a lot of these players to operate free and easy. It allowed the players to just focus on playing baseball. And I think AJ can establish a way of the Sox playing winning baseball and not needing corny acronyms like FAST or a bunch of try-hard dudes. Because again, in baseball, TWTW can only take you so far. You could try as hard as you can, but if you ground out, you're out. I don't care how hard you're running out of the box. And yes, you should be running hard out of the box, but you're still going to be out. If you can't hit a fastball, I don't care how hard you're trying. You can't hit a fastball. And he has played for other organizations, so it's not like he's completely insular to the White Sox, as some people are making it seem like. He did play for the Twins before he came there. He went to the Braves. He went to the Red Sox. The Rangers. He's been in other organizations. And it would be welcomed among the fan base that has become completely apathetic. I threw a survey out on X, formerly Twitter, under @LockedOnSox. 50.5% of you said that you would love the hire. 31.6% of the respondents said they like it, and only 17.9% said they'd hate it. And then on the YouTube community page, 65% of the respondents said they love it. 24% said they like it, and 11% said they'd hate it. In terms of the case against AJ, the Sox should go outside the organization family, only this time maybe pick the right guy. Going with Grifol over Ozzie in terms of the process of, hey, going with someone who had no ties to your organization and could give you a fresh perspective made sense. But the previous front office just picked the wrong guy. Don't pick a guy who's coming from an organization that kept finishing worse than you in the standings, as the Royals were doing up until this season. And then don't pick a guy who comes from the organization that had a managerial opening and passed on that guy. Pick someone from a consistent winning organization like the Dodgers or the Braves, the Phillies, the Rays, or Milwaukee maybe. And the Sox could do better with the potential candidates that they do have ties to. Again, here's my short list. Terry Francona. I know he's older, had to step away from the game for health issues, but he's winning as recently as last season. He should be a Hall of Fame manager. And reports have suggested that if he's feeling healthy again for next season, he could get back in. He's a plus manager. However, he may not want to come here because the early part of that anybody's tenure is going to feature losing. The Sox are going to lose again next year. The hope is that maybe they only lose 100 or 90 games. But he was your former Double-A manager back in the 1990s, dealt with the Michael Jordan circus at Double-A Birmingham. Skip Schumacher, I know the shine has come off of him this season, but he's won the NL Manager of the Year, and he steered a less talented club to the playoffs. He doesn't officially have ties to the club, but if Tony La Russa is still your shadow GM, running things behind the scenes, he kind of has ties to Schumacher, and he'd be a much better tie than, say, Mike Matheny, who I'd be scared of if the Sox hired him. And I'd also be scared of Mike Matheny because there's the Getz-Royals ties. Charlie Montoya, former manager of the Blue Jays, who had some success. Obviously, he's their current bench coach. And you can put him 3A or 3B with the next guy I'll discuss. But I throw him out there just for the experience factor. And he'd be a short-term guy to lead the club during the losing portion of the rebuild. Someone has to take the losses, but does have better credentials than Pedro. Sergio Santos, the White Sox Double-A manager, former player too. He's also played, though, for other organizations. He's done great things at Double-A, has worked with the young pitchers. You could flip a coin with him and Montoya in terms of your preference. Would you rather have the big league experience manager or Santos? And then Willie Harris, and I actually got his name right this time, Cubs third base coach, scored the winning run in the 2005 World Series. He's embraced the modern athlete, and he's clearly branched out from the Sox. The one thing, though, you may have to, and I know I'm going a little bit long, but I feel this is a very important topic. AJ may not want to do this at all, as I believe he did say on 670 The Score when he was on there with an interview. One of the reasons he didn't take the mutual decision of him no longer being a team ambassador was he has a family to focus on. He seems comfortable in his role as an analyst and a podcast host. And maybe Jerry's the guy floating the idea. And that could invite tension because Getz and AJ could be on the same scale as Kenny and Ozzie, because one of the speculated tipping points at AJ leaving the organization as a team ambassador was his criticism in an interview with Getz. And if it's Getz floating the idea to Bob, then maybe Jerry isn't going to want a straight shooter like AJ. And then the final knock, you got that huge risk of having another Robin Ventura on your hands. But again, AJ has had more depth in staying in the game than Robin. Well, let's get into a prime example of why the White Sox need a new manager, as the White Sox were swept and beaten badly by the Seattle Mariners over the weekend. The losing streak is now 14 games and no trades yet. Sadly, we do have to discuss what happened over the weekend, so let's talk about it next on Locked On White Sox. All right, I got two problems. I hate shopping, and I should probably have a better wardrobe beyond cargo shorts and White Sox t-shirts. With Stitch Fix, you get a stylist who understands your style, size, and budget. They do all the shopping for you. It's the easiest way to update your wardrobe this season. Easily upgrade your wardrobe this year with a professional stylist that helps you find new on-trend favorites that will work for you. Just give your stylist your size, style, and budget preferences. Order boxes when you want and how you want. No subscriptions required, and they send you 5 just for you pieces, plus outfit recommendations and pro styling advice. You keep what works and send back the rest. Your stylist always sends just right for you pieces, and it fits on point. It's like they have, ESP or something. I don't know how they do it, but they just get you. And if you don't love something, just send it back. Shipping, returns, and exchanges are always free. Style that makes you feel good as you look. Get started at stitchfix.com/MLB and get $20 off your first fix. That's stitchfix.com/MLB for $20 off. Stitchfix.com/MLB must redeem within 7 days of sign up. Offer does not include kid fixes. And are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest sports stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And the White Sox homestand continues as they start a 3-game set with the Kansas City Royals tonight. First pitch is at 7:10 p.m. Central. Catch every pitch of the White Sox hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search White Sox. And welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. And thank you for making the show your first listen. Again, lots of great White Sox podcasts out there. I just always ask you, make me your first listen. Well, a couple of takeaways from the weekend. First, no time to panic right now that Chris Getz has not made any deals. Still got a full day to go. And we got today, and we got tomorrow, until I believe it's 3 p.m. or 4 p.m. Central when the deadline passes. However, he is getting lapped by the Tampa Bay Rays, who are completely resetting their roster. And they can do that because they have faith in their player development system and their scouting. That allows them to move more stealthily to complete deals because they're not asking for the moon, the stars, and the suns. They're asking for the players that they know that can fit their organization and that they can develop. And look, I got no problem with Getz sticking to his guns, and I got no problem with Getz trying to maximize his return, but I also fear the lack of getting these deals done is he's overvaluing players that are not Garrett Crochet, Eric Fetty, and Luis Robert Jr. You know, Tommy Pham should have been traded last week. Paul DeJong, he hit a homer in the weekend series, but he should be hitting home runs for a contender. Those two have an established market from last season, and not much has changed where you're going to get a better deal. And you could literally lose both for nothing. So just trade them. And also, Bob Nightengale's report yesterday had a nugget that has me very concerned. And that is the Sox do not want to deal within the division. And I'll get to that in a second. But I'm going to hold off declaring this the official worst point in the season for 2 more days because things could actually get worse in the next 2 days. The Sox could top the franchise's non-single season losing streak if they lose tonight and tomorrow. The Sox did have a 15-game losing streak that started at the end of the 1967 season and stretched into 1968. And the Sox may not make any impactful deals with the deadline closing tomorrow. So it still technically can get worse. Also, I had a short on Friday night. Let's not panic over Drew Thorpe's terrible outing on Friday. And Garrett Crochet and Eric Fetty, they were not exactly sharp. But again, nothing I would say that we need to worry about. However, these innings limits on Crochet could impact his production as the season goes on. And, oh, yeah, the Sox were the get-right team for the Mariners. And the Mariners absolutely had, the Mariners were probably, their offense was just a little bit better than the White Sox, which is the worst offense in MLB. And the Mariners were crushing out runs as if they were the 1928 New York Yankees. It was like the murderer row out there. But first, I want to get into Bob Nightengale's report that has me scared about Chris Getz and why this weekend probably may have not had any trades. The White Sox, this is what Bob wrote. The White Sox are telling contenders in the AL Central, including the Minnesota Twins, that they would really prefer not to trade within the division. The Twins and Guardians would love to get their hands on starter Eric Fetty. All right, taking away the talent pool of 3 franchises in the Royals, the Twins, and the Guardians, especially the Guardians have bats that you need to replenish your system, is just foolish. You have just lost 81 games, and you are not a new manager, a revamped bullpen, and a few bats away from getting back into the AL Central race next year. You need to completely overhaul this franchise. And Eric Fetty, if you did trade him to the Twins or the Guardians, would only be on them for a season and a half. So even if you face him during that time, you're still going to be bad, and you're not going to be competing for the division. I don't get this delusion that the White Sox are going to be competing for the division next year. We don't know about their revenue resources with the TV deals, that they might be able to spend a ton of money in free agency. We don't know that yet. And even if they do you trust Chris Getz to sign the right players? He put together this terrible roster right now, and there are some mitigating factors. I know that he wasn't able to recruit the most elite free agents because of spending restrictions and the terrible reputation the White Sox have right now in the free agent community. And maybe he started and cleaned that up, and they will be able to pursue some impact players. Anthony Santander, I'd love to have him on the team next year, but I don't think signing him and a couple of bullpen arms, and hiring AJ Pierzynski is going to suddenly make you a contender for the AL Central, where if Eric Fetty's now on the other side, that could prevent you from winning the division title. And also, think of it this way. If the Guardians give up some bats, you could have a long-term solution to your lineup's problems that could haunt your division foe. You're looking at it all wrong, Chris Getz. Also, Bob reported that the Dodgers might still make a run at Crochet, but if they wanted him by now, I think they would have had him, because you get Chris Getz on the phone and you say we're not getting off until we get a deal done. So that makes Fetty the top pitcher on the trade market. So I understand why they may take him up to the trade deadline to get the max return to build up a bidding war. But if the Guardians and the Twins make the best offer, you take the deal because you owe it to the franchise to make the best deal possible. Not, well, we may be competitive by 2026, and there's a chance the Twins or the Guardians could extend Fetty, then he could possibly beat us. The Twins are easily beating you right now without Eric Fetty. Okay, think of it that way. And again, the Rays are out here trading all-star Isaac Paredes to the Cubs for Christopher Morel and some prospects. They traded reliever Jason Adam to the Padres, Zach Eflin to their rivals, the Orioles. They traded Zach Eflin to the Orioles. Okay, they traded within the division. Randy Arozarena to the Mariners. And they're getting returns that they feel comfortable with because they are confident in their scouting and development. The Sox have reportedly been scouting, these potential trade partners for months now. They've been, it was reported, I think, at the beginning of the month that they were looking at the Padres system, the Mariners system, the Dodgers. So what are you waiting for? You should have all the information. If you got guys you like, make the deal if the team is willing to make the deal. And especially, yes, I may be talking about trading players for the sake of trading players, but you kind of have to do on some of these players. You do need to trade Pham. You do need to trade DeYoung, Chris Flexen, John Brebbia. Because you're going to lose 4 of those guys for nothing. If you want to turn things, and especially if you want to turn things around quicker, you at least need to trade Fetty and Michael Kopech, because they could probably net you some potential impact bats where, DeYoung and Pham, it might be a lottery ticket flyer type prospect. But stop playing chicken. And maybe except for everyone but Fetty, Crochet, and Luis Robert Jr., you might have to accept less than 100% return. But my fear is Getz is doing one of two things. He wants to look like a tough guy GM, or 2, he knows in his heart the franchise does not have the resources to develop hitting like, say, the Rays do. And then Drew Thorpe, he got roughed up for 8 runs, 3 straight dingers in 2/3 of an innings on Friday, a day after Dylan Cease threw a no-hitter. Thorpe coming in for Cease. So not the greatest look, but I wrote about this on SouthsideShowdown.com. The context of that criticism is misguided. The Sox had to trade Cease, as they were not extending him, and no one had a clue that the young pitching would be this good this season. And second, Thorpe, he's going to have nights like this. I had him in the minors, had him against the Diamondbacks in his second career start. If he's wild in the strike zone with his like how he was with his fastball, it was up on Friday. And since his fastball does not have a lot of velocity, it's usually 90 to 91, and it doesn't have much movement, it's going to get hit into the seats. So if you can't locate in the corners or keep the ball down to set up that change, that's the fear that he's going to get roughed up. And there is the fear that now teams are going to sit on the change, but he just has to make that adjustment. But that changeup is still a great pitch, and if he can locate it, like he's done in 6 of his 8 starts, he still is on the career trajectory of being like a Mark Burley and Aaron Nolan. Tom Glavine, he didn't have blazing stuff, and hitters knew it was coming, but they could locate it. And I know Fetty and Crochet, they were not effective. Fetty lasted just 4 innings on Saturday. He's probably pulled just in case he's traded. Crochet, 3 innings, 5 runs, 3 earned yesterday. I get the pitch limit. He threw just 64 pitches and just 13 innings this month. And I think that's slowing him down. I don't have the magic answer, but I prefer it be more of a pitch count from here on out. Like say, hey, we're going to give you 75 to 80 pitches and then just set him down in September. I have no problem if he does not pitch in September at all. And also, finally, apologies to Brooks Baldwin. I questioned him last week. Young man went 5 for 11 with a multi-hit game on Saturday and 4 doubles. He just kept ripping it to right field, and I think he may have found a swing that works. So my apologies to Brooks Baldwin. Well, it's Monday, so let's have a minor league Monday report, as I always do, next on Locked On White Sox. Get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trade, supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy to use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with a fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert support and an industry leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive advantage by joining supplyhouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at supplyhouse.com /TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at supplyhouse.com. And the White Sox homestand continues as they start a 3-game set with the Kansas City Royals tonight. First pitch is at 7:10 p.m. Central. Catch every pitch of the White Sox hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search White Sox. Welcome back into Locked On White Sox. I am your host, Todd Welter. Hope you had a good weekend. Thank you for sticking with me this long through the show. I love you every day. Shout out to our YouTube community. Really appreciate some of the nice comments that you guys have left recently. Really like that. I got a treat for you guys coming up next week. I'm actually going to be in Disney World next week. I'm going on vacation. I had this vacation planned before I came to an agreement to take over Locked On White Sox. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to tape a fan series next week. I want to talk about White Sox fandom, and I've got a great line of guests. I'm producing the content right now, going to edit it and get it out for you guys. I got Sean Anderson of CHGO to talk about the current and future state of fandom. I got Matt Flesh of Last Comiskey to talk about Old Comiskey Park and all that fun nostalgia. Missy Carroll from Southside Behavior and Sports Mockery, how she's just built basically a brand about being a Sox fan. Ozzie Guillen Jr. to talk about growing up around the White Sox. And then got the From the 108 guys to talk about building a fan movement. All right, so the Sox may not be making trades, but they did promote first baseman Tim Elko to AAA. Elijah Evans of Just Baseball Media and Future Sox at Elijah EV8. He tweeted this out. Tim Elko is heading to AAA. The hashtag White Sox prospect dominated the lower levels last year in his professional season, making it all the way to AA. He's got a 758 OPS with 9 home runs this season in Birmingham. Charlotte is going to be very fun in August. Now, to me, Elko is what is okay with the Sox drafting philosophy. They do draft a lot of high floor guys, and I actually believe he should be able to make it to the majors. But I want high ceiling guys. And I'm not sure Elko's that. I want guys that you can get excited about, that rake. Yes, you do need to have some depth guys. And I could see Elko maybe being Gavin Sheets. And Gavin Sheets is fine as a bench player. But I want to see the system start producing impact positional bats. And one guy who has a high ceiling in their system, George Wolcott, he had a great game yesterday for Low A Kannapolis, 2 for 5, 2 RBIs, a run scored, made a nice defensive play also, but he did strike out 3 times. And someone has to teach this young man patience because he still has all the tools to be a stud. He's the one guy that you can look at and be like, that guy can be a stud. But his major weakness is he just swings at way too many pitches. He's got a 292, 400, 458 slash line in his last 10 games. But why is it every time I turn on the Charlotte Knights games, I usually see this sequence? And this is another thing where it's like just a little leery about the system's ability to produce bats. Maybe it's coincidence, but when I turned on the Charlotte Knights game, I think it was Friday. This was the sequence with the 3 bats that the Sox do have that at least have the talent to be foundational. Third baseman Brian Ramos, he's up with runners on, ground out. Catcher Edgar Caro produces something positive. Shortstop Colson Montgomery, the top prospect, gets out. And I feel like I've seen that sequence a few times when I turn on Charlotte Knights games. I keep feeling very confident that Edgar Caro is going to produce at the big leagues and be a good player, and he might be their stud. Ramos and Montgomery, or Ramos and Montgomery, I'm concerned, dude. We have a concern, dude. Montgomery slash line is 200, 317, 343 over the past 10 games with just one home run. Ramos is doing a bit better over the past 10 with 243, 296, 411 slash line. Obviously, we'd like to see the on base a little bit higher, but at least he's got a decent slugging and he has 3 home runs. Caro's last 10 slash line 270, 410. He gets on base and 381. The other potential foundational bat is Jacob Gonzalez. He's at AA. Not having the best 10-game stretch, but he did have a good game yesterday, 2 for 5 with 2 RBIs. Samuel Zavala, the other high potential bat, still trying to figure things out at High A Winston-Salem. 074, 286, 074 slash line in his last 10 games. That is why the Sox must add bats before tomorrow in the trade deadline. There's just too many questions on their quote-unquote higher ceiling prospects. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. But before I go, are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting. Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest sports stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I'll be back tomorrow to hopefully discuss some trades the Sox made. And if not, I'm going to do a Throwback Tuesday as Wednesday. I plan on having Elijah Evans from Just Baseball and Future Sox on to discuss the trade deadline moves the Sox hopefully make then tomorrow. Feel free to leave comments about today's topics regarding AJ Pierzynski as the potential next manager, the terrible White Sox weekend, and the Minor League Monday Report. You can leave them at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at ToddJDub or at Locked On Sox, or you can email me at LockedOnWhiteSox@gmail.com. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow.